Ever wonder how to get these rusty things ready for trapping? We're going to show you how right now. Hi, this is Todd with my boys, Michael and Stefan from Sniping, Rhino Ranch. Today, we're going to show you how to take a bunch of rusty traps and get them ready to put out on some sets. The boys are homeschooled, and one of the classes they do each day is life skills. That can cover a wide array of topics. It can be automotive, farming, gardening, you name it. But today, we started showing them how to trap. We scouted out some areas, found some places for some coyotes, for some beaver, and of course we'll always be trapping raccoon. We figured why not have you join this process and you can learn along with us. That being said, make sure if you're not a subscriber that you hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, hit the notification button as well so you don't miss any of the videos. Let's get to work.
First thing you need to do is get any excess rust off. We're using wire brushes, and as you can tell by my hand, it's not a very clean job.
Now that we've knocked the rust off the traps, it's time to go to the next step, which is dyeing and waxing the traps. We have a lot of different stuff here on the table, and the boys are going to tell you what they are. Stefan?
We have 4 different types of dyes here. The first one, probably the most natural, is black walnut dye. You just take 2, 3, 5-gallon buckets of it and let it soak. The next one we have is speed dip. You just take a gallon of gasoline and mix it with this bucket, and then dip the traps in for a few moments. The bad side, though, is that you have to leave it out longer for the smell to go away. The next method we have is liquid trap dye. You just take this and dump it into water. And the final one we have is logwood trap dye. You just take it, dump it into water, and then mix it.
Thanks, Stefan. Michael's going to tell us the different types of waxes that we have. Michael?
What we have here is paraffin wax, which is in the canning section, most likely of a grocery store. These are trap store waxes. This one is clear, and this one has black dye added.
Thanks, Michael. The last thing we have on the table is Rust-Oleum flat black spray paint. We use this to spray paint our water traps. When doing water traps, you don't have to really worry about odor. But just to be on the safe side, we usually let the traps hang for a couple days to make sure there's no odor left before we put them out. Anyway, now that we've talked about what's on the table, let's get out and start dyeing some traps. So we're getting ready to dye our traps. We had a couple of packets of logwood trap dye that busted open, so we're going to use that. We've got our pot here that we'll be doing the traps in, and we got this little thing that goes on the bottom. We'll just sit this in here in the water, and that's going to keep the traps from touching the bottom of the pan and risking having the heat at the bottom of the pot here cause the springs of the traps to get brittle. So Stefan, why don't you go ahead and put that in? While Stefan's stirring that, Michael's going to go ahead and light our camp stove. We just have a camp stove, but you can use anything. You don't have to have or worry about a fire hazard when you're doing the dyeing process. It's a little bit different though when we start waxing. But Michael, why don't you go ahead and light the stove for us?
You better not your children. Nope.
So we're going to go ahead and get the trap trap dye pot, and we're going to put it on there and bring it to a boil. Once it's to a boil, we'll back off the heat a little bit until it starts simmering. And then we're going to put the traps in. It's probably going to take a little bit for it to get to a boil though.
Oh, I already got it all over myself.
So as you can see, the water's coming to a boil. So we're going to go ahead and put the traps in here. So Michael's going to put the first set. Stefan, why don't you grab the other one? We're just going to set them in here. We've got these rebar holding them on. I'll make sure that they get completely submerged. And what we're going to do is we're going to let them sit here for 40 minutes to an hour. and just let them sit here and simmer in this dye. Where all the rust was, it'll really take that dye really well. So now it's just a waiting game to let it finish dyeing. So we'll be back in about 40 minutes or an hour to pull these out, hang them up to dry. Now to make sure that these swivels, I'm gonna just go ahead and set it. If you notice, we got bolts on there. So we'll just kind of set those down in there, and that'll make sure they all get it. So while we're waiting for the traps to finish dyeing, the boys are gonna go ahead and spray paint our 330 conibear traps.
What?
Make sure you get every spot on it. And both traps are now spray painted. We'll let them hang and dry. They'll be ready to go in the water. So the boys and the cats are playing while we wait for the stuff to finish. Okay, it's been about 45 minutes. We're gonna go ahead and take these out and hang them up to dry, and then we'll put the next one in. So Michael, why don't you go ahead and grab the first one and take it in. I'm gonna hold this just so it doesn't spill. Now you always want to check these rebars and make sure that they're not the hot. I did that before. They're cool, so the boys aren't gonna have problems. Michael, why don't you grab that other one? We have one more set we're going to do. We're not doing a full trapping season, so we're not doing a bunch of traps this year. Go ahead and set all the way down. So we're going to let these things go, and next time we see you, we'll be doing waxing. So I've decided that I'm going to switch pots. I was usually dyeing in this one and waxing in this one. That makes no sense. You want the narrower one, so it's a little deeper with less wax than this one. When you're doing waxing, it's a little more dangerous than the dyeing because the wax is flammable. So you want to do it away from anything. I do it outside, and you want to make sure you have a lid or something that if it does catch on fire, you can put the fire out. You also want to melt it and not get it too hot. If you get it too hot, the wax can ignite. So I'm going to go ahead and I broke up the wax. I'm going to go ahead and just continue to put it in here and melt it down so that tomorrow I've already got my wax transferred over to the new one. And it's just a matter of heating it up and get it back to liquid form. So that's what I'm doing. So it's been a couple days since we dyed the traps, and the traps are ready to go. If you notice, I'm wearing rubber gloves. For us, we always at this point start wearing rubber gloves just because some of the traps you don't have to worry about, especially the water traps, but just to do it the same all the time so we don't get odor onto our traps that it matters on, we always wear rubber gloves. Now the waxing process is really going to keep the odor away, but again, it's something we do to make it a habit. Now about half this pot is filled with wax, and right now it's in solid form. So it's going to take a little bit to heat this up and get it in liquid form. So the boys are doing school right now. I've come down here. I'm going to go ahead and get it onto our stove, get this melted down, and we'll be ready to start dipping traps. So the wax is now completely melted and we're ready to start doing traps. I'll get the boys and we'll start dipping them. So I have the boys down here, and we're ready to start dipping the trap into the wax. So I've got these wires on here so we can get the entire trap, to include the chain, underneath the wax. So I'm just going to set it in, and what I want to make sure is that the entire trap gets into the wax. Now this one, just a little bit is out, so I'll just use a stick and I'll make sure that the entire trap is submerged. When we put them in here, we want to leave the traps in long enough for the metal to get hot so that it takes the wax in a smooth coating around the entire trap. When you're ready to pull it out, you'll pull it out. If there's clumps on it, it should just look like the trap is wet, and that way you know that it's been in there long enough to heat up the metal. So boys, why don't you go ahead and put some traps in there? Let these simmer for a few minutes, let the metal warm up. Again, you don't want to put the traps directly on the bottom, because if you do, it can damage the springs. So the traps have now been in here for, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes or so, and basically we'll take them out and we want to hold it over and let all the excess wax drip off. Now it should just look like water coming off of it. So these are ready to come, so we'll just come and we'll set them where we're going to hang them, and then we'll put the next batch in. Go ahead, boys. And we're ready to put the next trap in. So we're going to go ahead and continue to wax the rest of the traps. And that's the end of the process. We'll let these hang for a few hours. And when they're dry, we'll put them in a plastic container so we don't have to worry about odor. But that's pretty much it. Next step after today is putting the traps out there.